All right, guys, it is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. Today marks, I don't know, on the 30-day thrash because I lost a few days. I guess I'm just pretty much going to change it and just pick it right back up where I left off on the number as to not get it all messed up. But technically I lost a couple of days because of GoPro issues. And then my birthday was actually over the weekend, this past weekend. So there was pretty much 2 days I didn't really do anything, but it was a half a day I actually worked on Sunday out here on the stuff, but it was just little piddly stuff. But it was pretty much just a relaxation weekend for me. Went and ate at one of the local parks with my mom and dad and my wife, and all of us took our dogs and we had some breakfast. We got breakfast to go and went down there. They have covered park benches down there, really, really nice in the shade, the cool breeze coming through. Man, it was really nice. That was my birthday breakfast. Pretty much had omelets and hash browns. It's good stuff. Anyway, so I'm just going to pick up where I left off. And I was hoping that the GoPro was fixed, but I could not get the GoPro to turn on a while ago. Like, I could not get it to turn on. So I took the battery out, pushed it back in, snapped it in, you know, and then hit the button and it came on. So I don't know if this GoPro is going out. I don't know, man. This thing's right at about a year old, maybe just barely over a year old, and I haven't really had any issues, so, you know, I don't know. Maybe I've just worn it out already. I couldn't imagine that, but anyway, I'll show you what I got done on the chassis. So it is getting close to lunchtime already. I've been out here working all morning. I did have to go do some errands this morning. I went and got my new tap to drill the L bracket on the, I guess I can just show you instead of talking about it. So I did paint the inlay back here with some more of that POR 15 semi-gloss, because if you remember the way I painted this, I had it raw in here because I had an engine stand stuffed back up in there and I couldn't spray that area, so I just brush painted it and you can't really tell. It still looks fine. But I drilled and tapped this L bracket. I'd welded on the axle tube right here. And put a Billet Specialties line clamp on there to hold the brake lines. I broke my tap off in this one trying to drill, and I drilled it and then I tried tapping it, and the tap I had was really old and it was pretty weak and it snapped off in there, but luckily I got it out with some needle nose pliers. But anyway, that's a pretty thick casting to try to, you know, tap, and I always do it by hand with a little 1/4-inch ratchet, but you know, when it starts getting really tight, I'll back it off and I'll about a half a turn and then I'll go at it again. So it takes forever, but it just snapped right off like it was nothing. But, you know, just what happens. It was an old tap. I bet it was 5 or 6 years old. I've used the crap out of that thing, so it was just time, you know what I mean? But anyway, so the rear end's topped off with rear end oil, so I don't have to mess with that anymore. The clamp's on. I did do the touch-up paint on the back, and I had to touch up this spot over here because I had to angle cut this body mount flange right here off so the fuel line would lay in there. So I ended up going in there with I took the line loose. It's actually still wet. I just touched it. Anyway, I took that clamp off, lifted the line up, I brush painted it, and then I laid the line back down and bolted it on, so it's still wet, but I don't really care. I did wipe the frame down because it was covered in dust. And I also finished out my fuel line. I'd left it long and just kind of hand bent it up around here, so it was really long. It looked kind of weird, but I ended up taking the 3 clamps out here and lifting it way up, and then I put a nice, I used my bender and put a little 90-degree bend in it. It's not quite 90, but anyway, then I flared the end here just a little bit, enough to put the rubber hose on there with a hose clamp. So you got to keep in mind, if you're doing a fuel line on your car, your engine moves, your engine shakes because it is rubber isolated, or, you know, urethane, which urethane doesn't move around as much as rubber does. But anyway, your frame does not move. So if you know, flared this in with a fitting on it and you bolted it to the fuel pump, that fuel line's going to get weak and end up cracking. So you do have to have like a rubber flex hose or something there to do it. What else did I do? It feels like I did a bunch of stuff, but I guess I really didn't do nothing. Good golly. I topped off the oil in the rear. I think I said that. I guess that's it. Wow. A couple hours work this morning, didn't get nothing done. So now the next project is, that's why I pulled the frame out. I got to get my engine hoist out, get this engine hoisted up in the air, because these stupid one-piece rear mains, the aluminum piece that goes back here, I cannot get it down in between the engine stand and the crank. So I'm going to have to pull the engine stand piece off of the block to get that in there. So that kind of sucks. And I have to put that on before I put the pan on. But I got to finish cleaning up the pan. It's pretty dingy inside. I've washed it with some old solvent I have here. And it just leaves a behind gritty mess. But anyway, I bought some purple power to give it a washing with. So I need to get those two. The timing chain, I think I soaked it in muriatic acid and then I blasted it, and then I've left it out here for over a week, so it's got surface rust on it. So I don't know if I'm just going to hand sand that or get the blaster back out. I'll probably just hand sand it so I don't have to, you know, get filthy with that sand blaster. But anyway, so I plan on trying to get that stuff on the engine today, so that will pretty much be a done short block at that point. All right, guys, so I got a little bit done today. I got the engine hanging from the engine hoist, and that way I could remove the engine stand so I could put my housing on for the rear main seal stuff. So I got it all on. I put in new freeze plugs. I got the oil pan without a seal on it, just with one bolt on each side down and just barely tight. Same way with the timing cover, one bolt on each side, and then I popped a spray paint cap. Some spray paint caps will pop right in there on a small block Chevy, so it's a really nice paint mask. Anyway, what I usually do when I paint an engine is I don't put the seal on the timing cover, and I don't put the seal on the oil pan, and then this is the way that I paint the block. Because when you go in here and you paint, you get that, you know, edge painted, and you know, even though you might get a tinge of overspray in there, it's not going to be enough to hurt anything. But after your paint dries, you can take the oil pan and timing cover back off and then put your seals on. And then if you ever have to remove any of that later, it doesn't destroy your paint job by having everything all painted together, bolts and all. And that's the other thing. If you're using, you know, aftermarket shiny hardware, you know, you don't want to paint all that stuff. And if you went in and masked off every head bolt on an oil pan on a small block Chevy and the timing cover, you're in for a lot of work. So what I do, like in this case, I'm using 12-point ARP hex head, not 12-point, hex head polished stainless steel ARPs. Now those have a flange made onto the head of the bolt, and they're a bigger around than a socket cap Allen like I'm using here. The reason I use the socket cap Allens is I paint it that way, and when I pull these socket cap Allens out of it, there's going to be a spot where there's no paint, but it's smaller than that ARP bolt. So the ARP bolt, when I bolt it down, will cover the area that has no paint. And it's just what I do. But anyway, I'm pretty happy. I got quite a bit done today. I had to clean out the oil pan with some degreaser. I got it to where it's squeaky clean. You run your fingers on it and it squeaks. The other thing I do right here is in case you don't know, when you buy a brand new engine gasket set, you'll get a little round plastic white, you know, nylon or whatever washer, and that's your new sealing washer for your oil pan. So what I usually do is I will mask off the bolt and that washer just a little bit, and I'll fold the tape over, and then I'll put it on there almost to it, just right up to it. I don't tighten it, just right up to it, and that way when you paint it, it's the same diameter as your plastic sealing washer. And then I always tape off down in here where the oil filter seal is going to be. Anyway, just what I do. And then I mask off this here. But I've got to mask off the deck surface there, and I'll do that tomorrow. I pretty much have to build my heads now and get those prepped out. So this is pretty much as far as I can go with the engine itself. But right now I'm going to go ahead and put my lawn and leaf garden whatever bag, trash bag, back on the engine. This is what kind of sucks. This is bags for an engine block, and these things ain't long enough to completely wrap the engine up. I don't remember where I got, it was like a pack of 3, I think, and I don't remember where I got these. I've had them for a long time, but this was a new one. But it's just not long enough. So I went to Walmart and I bought some lawn and leaf, you know, trash bags with the drawstring. When you get the drawstring, you can put it from the front of the engine, put it over it, and then when you get it back here and you pull your drawstring, you can wrap your drawstring, both of them, around the back of your engine stand like that, and that seals it up pretty good. dust and stuff. So a little more tip there. Not saying I'm a professional at doing this. I'm just, a lot of people, you know, may not have ever done this, and this is just a good little way of doing it. It's the way I do it. Also, while I had the engine stand unbolted off the back of the engine to put the rear main seal stuff on, I went ahead and redid my galley plugs. Now, these are the original oil galley plugs here. I cleaned them up on the bench grinder on a wire wheel and applied new thread sealer and then put them back in. Now, if you'll notice, a lot of small blocks have these this way. It's a square head. They're female, basically. So you have to have a male pipe plug socket. And this is a set that you can buy. You have male and females. Of course, this is female. And then you have male. Now, on the small block, it takes a 1/4 inch. It's just a square head. And it's kind of funny because you read 1/4 inch and you automatically know that you don't even need that to take those out. All you need is your 1/4 inch ratchet or 1/4 inch extension. That square fits right down in there. So you don't have to have that whole set to do that. You can do it with a 1/4 inch socket and ratchet. Or not socket, but ratchet and extension. But anyway, there's it's pretty much about as prepped as I'm going to get it. I do need to mask off the back of this seal here. I don't want any of this back of this crankshaft painted. But anyway, somebody had mentioned they didn't know why I didn't replace my freeze plugs, and the plan all along was to replace the freeze plugs. But this one here I actually had to put in before because this one had holes in it. It was leaking. As soon as I put muriatic acid down in them cylinders, this was leaking out. It had a rust hole in it. So I put one of my brand new ones in there already. But anyway, if I would have knocked those out, I couldn't put muriatic acid in there to let it soak and clean up the rust. It would have just came right out where the freeze plug holes are. So if you have to do it like I do, leave your old freeze plugs in there, fill it full of muriatic acid or whatever to clean your, coolant passages, and then drain it out, wash it out, and then knock your freeze plugs out and replace them with new ones, which is what I did. So anyway, so I'm pretty happy, man. I mean, that's a little bit of progress, you know what I mean? I got the short block pretty much ready for paint. I mean, I still have to mask off the deck surface and the lifter valley and the back of the crank there, which I'll do that when I quit recording here. It actually got really cloudy for a second. I thought it was getting ready to rain, and thought I was going to have to put up the chassis, or at least get another carport. Anyway, I'm going to give you all a tip here, and this is probably going to fire up some guys, but I don't really care. I learned the hard way, so I'm going to pass on this little tidbit here because I learned the hard way, and then a few years later I ended up going into a class, and I learned this from the teacher of the class. So if you have Teflon tape and you use this on your car, I feel sorry for you. This is exactly what the teacher told me. Teflon tape is for your house. It's for plumbers. It is not for cars. What you're supposed to use is thread sealer, the liquid type. If you ever buy a brand new carburetor, universal style electric inline fuel pump, nitrous oxide kit, whatever. If you read the instructions, it will tell you to never use Teflon tape on them. So you're supposed to use thread sealant. It doesn't have to be ARP. Permatex makes some, and I have some of that over there as well. But anyway, the thing that I learned when I was I think I was 19, I built a two-door Post 55. I took it off the frame, did the frame kind of like that, although this one's a lot nicer because back then I didn't have a lot of money and a lot of tools. So anyway, I got the car all built. I put it together, and I got about a mile out of town on the first test drive. The car died. It just shut off, wouldn't restart. It would actually try to start, it just wouldn't run. So at the time, I was working in a mechanic shop. And the mechanic shop at that time, I didn't work there for a long time, but if any older guys ever heard of Cannon Motorcycles, he was the guy that actually put a big block Chevy in motorcycles and went into production. He didn't stay in production very long, but I worked for him for a little bit. Learned a lot from that guy. I've kind of been around. I've went to a lot of shops, and I've picked up a lot of stuff from a lot of people. Anyway, he towed my car to the shop, and he messed with the car a little bit and was looking at it, noticed it wasn't squirting any fuel, and he told me, take the carburetor off and take it apart. So I took the bowls off and all that stuff. Now I had a double pumper Holley on it, and I had the old school chrome cheap little steel fuel line that goes to both bowls. It has a flare fitting on both fuel bowls and then goes up to a, like I want to say it was almost like a flared or barbed fitting or something to put rubber hose on. And I had put Teflon tape on those nuts, on those flare fittings to that carburetor. And I mean, I had it on my heater hoses. I had put it on a lot of stuff on the car. I had it on the fittings on the block mount fuel pump. And anyway, he took the metering plate from the Holley and he took his air blower, and it had a little bitty rubber cone tip on it, really small tip on it, and he could blow out them orifices in carburetors really well. I have one as well. Anyway, he held that jet plate up and he blew it out, and it looked like somebody threw white confetti in the air, and it was Teflon tape in my metering plate. It had just got it piled up in there. So he told me then, that was before I took a class later and learned that, you never put Teflon tape on a flared fitting, ever. That's the reason it's a flared fitting. So anyway, I learned the hard way, and it was my very first frame-off, full-blown build I ever did. I mean, I wasn't fully experienced, you know, but anyway, I ended up taking classes. I worked for an ASE certified shop for a while, and I would take classes every once in a while. It seemed like it was once a month or something on just a weekend during the day in Tulsa. And anyway, he paid for it, but I learned a lot of different stuff there from ASE guys, and he's the guy that said Teflon tape is for plumbers, don't put it on cars, and he's ASE certified. So that's what I learned, and I know it's probably going to irritate people or piss them off because, you know, they've never had a problem with it, but maybe I just use it a little bit too excessively. But anyway, I don't use Teflon tape on my car engines. The only reason I have Teflon tape out here is for my air compressor hose fittings or stuff for the house for plumbing in there. I don't use it on automobiles. But anyway, guys, I think it's getting close to 5 p.m., so I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it off today. But this is pretty much where I'm at here. Tomorrow I think I'm going to try to get the heads all completely done and rebuilt and ready. That'll be my main focus for tomorrow, is just rebuild head day. And then at that point those heads they'll be ready for paint. Now I will have to blast my intake manifold. I have a used Performer Edelbrock RPM over here. It's kind of dingy. I do want to paint it the Chevy orange as well, but I'm going to have to blast it and clean it up because it's pretty grimy. But anyway, if I get the heads all done tomorrow and I have a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and blast that intake as well. So anyway, hopefully I'll be painting this engine, and I'm real excited to get the engine painted, because at that point, you know, when all the engine stuff's painted and it's turned right side up on the stand, I can bolt a few little pieces and goodies on it for, you know, something to stand back and look at. So that'd be kind of cool. But anyway, what else? It just kind of wanted to concentrate on some paint details for some of you guys that, you know, just in case you're interested in, you know, painting your engine and have a little bit of detail. Another thing is, if you get a Felpro full engine gasket set, you'll always get one of these seals right here. This is actually the back for a long water pump plate on the back of the long water pump. If you can see, I took mine off. You can see the new gasket right there. I painted it black to give it a little detail, but I also put 12-point ARPs in the back of the water pump. I'm not going to do it to that car because I bought a brand new water pump from Summit, just a stock cast iron replacement. The bolts are metric. That one was actually standard, but the ones I have are metric for the 4-door, so I'm not going to worry about taking it off because I don't have any ARP bolts that are metric, and I'm not buying any. But that is another little detail you can do if you have a long water pump. I don't think I'd mess with it with a short, but I've always been a long water pump guy just because they're easier to find in the parts stores. The short water pumps, to me, every time I've always run a short water pump stuff, I always had problems with belts squealing or coming off or not being in line, and it's just a mess. You have an alternator conversion on there and it's hanging way up here, and it moves when the engine's idling. I just like the long water pump stuff better. It's I was told one time, I don't know if it's true, that they flowed better than a short. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't care. I just use long water pump because they're always on the shelf at the parts store. It seemed like the times I had to use a short water pump, they never had to stock them. They always had to order them. But the brackets, you know, bolt up, and they're just a lot better, in my opinion, because you have all the stuff on those water pumps to bolt, you know, alternator brackets or whatever on there. So anyway, you have to put your radiator out in the 6-cylinder position, which in my opinion is a better place to put the radiator because you don't see down inside the core support, whereas if your radiator's back here for V8 position, you can see all down in the core support. And most core supports, originals, are going to be rusty pitted down in there. So unless you go in there and do all your, you know, putty work and prime and block down in there and to paint all that stuff, it'd be best to have that radiator out here. Now that's just my opinion, and this is pretty much turned into a detail video. But anyway, little food for thought there. But anyway, guys, I'm going to finish cleaning up my mess. I'm going to get the frame pulled back in here, and I think that's pretty much going to do it for today. I've got a lot coming up on that car, man. There's going to be a lot of videos coming out. I'm going to completely wire the whole car myself, one wire at a time. I'm going to use an original fuse box with the glass fuses because it's just a basic car. I don't have any gadgets on it. It's just a 55 Chevy, man. That's what I like about it. The only other thing I'm doing different is an alternator instead of a generator. So anyway, I'm going to be wiring the system myself, one wire at a time. So I'm going to try to break it down. When I get to the wiring, I'm going to break it down into systems of the wiring, like starting system, charging system, dome light, that type of stuff. And I can show you pretty much how to wire all that stuff up from nothing. Because, you know, a lot of guys, that might interest somebody, like your dome light's not working in your car, and after I show how easy it is to hook up one just from anything, you'll be able to diagnose that problem pretty easy. But I'm also going to have some metalwork videos coming out, some bodywork videos, block sanding, primer, all kinds of stuff coming out, even painting the firewall and the dash on the car. But lots of videos going to be coming out on this 4-door. So I'm pretty excited, man. It'll be a lot of stuff to do. I just hope my GoPro makes it, because I just tried to turn it on and it didn't want to come on. I had to pull the battery out and plug it back in to get the GoPro to come back on again. So I don't know if this thing's starting to mess up or what, but it's only a year old. I would think it would last longer than that. But anyway, guys, got to clean up.